will get 2 minutes for closing statements. There is no studio audience tonight. Pre-written notes, props, or contact with campaign staff are not permitted during the debate.
I should have checked
By
my audio
accepting
first.
our invitation to debate, both candidates and their campaigns agreed to accept these rules.
Now, please welcome the 46th President of the United States, Joe Biden.
I need this. Oh. All right, it's still going on my other screen. Hold on. Oh, I should turn this down on this other screen. All right, so I'm doing this alone. Couldn't find anyone to do it with. Here they are. Here are the boys.
Let's start with the issue that voters consistently say is their top concern, the economy. President Biden, inflation has slowed, but prices remain high. Since you took office, the price
Trump didn't bring up inflation, so I'm not going to say
a basket of groceries that cost $100
that
now costs more than $120. And typical home prices have jumped more than 30%.
Doesn't count as Trump's inflation. I have a bingo sheet.
They are worse off under
a bingo sheet, and that's how I'm.
We got to take a look at what I was left when I became president and what Mr. Trump left me. We had an economy that was in free fall. The pandemic was so badly handled. Many people were dying. All he said was, it's not that serious. Just inject a little bleach in your arm. You'll be all right. The economy collapsed.
All right. I'm going to pause it there. I need to make sure my audio is working. I should have checked before I came in, right? But is there no way to do it now that I'm here? Oh, there it is. Testing. Okay. All right, it's working fine. So that's the audio. So I have, they're not on the screen. I wish there's a way for me to present two things at once. I've got little bingo sheets here for both candidates. And they lay out things that are commonly said. You can imagine that Joey's probably says something like, he brings up ice cream, or he accuses Trump of colluding with Russia, stuff like that. And then there's also regular Heidegger stuff, so like an appeal to authority. Man, I wish I had more time. I should have made a thumbnail for this. I had to take a shower before I started. But yeah, all right, let's keep going with this. Yeah, let's listen to what Joey has to say here. Can I pause it? Can I not? I wish I could pause it from here.
There were no jobs. Unemployment rate rose to 15%. It was terrible. And so what we had to do was try to put things back together again. And that's exactly what we began to do. We created 15,000 new jobs, and we brought out a position where we have 800,000 new manufacturing jobs. But there's more to be done. There's more to be done. Working class people.
It's not sharing this stream, is it?
I come from Scranton, Pennsylvania. I come from a household where the kitchen table things weren't able to be met during the month. It was a problem. The price of eggs, the price of gas, the price of housing, the price of a whole range of things. That's why I'm working so hard to make sure I deal with those problems. That we're going to make sure that we reduce it.
You know, I appreciate that, Joe, but I feel like the thing about him coming from Scranton, Pennsylvania, is Scranton like it's a blue collar town, but are people buying like Joe Biden is so connected to his roots that he's still fighting for the little guy? This might be a good strategy. It might come off as disingenuous. I don't really know. I don't know how like the average person is going to feel about this. It might be good. I mean, I suppose it's better than not talking about it, right? I mean, people like the honest crook, don't they? So it might be better this way. Who knows?
Price of housing. We're going to make sure we build 2 million new units. We're going to make sure we cap rents so corporate greed can't take over.
Okay, building more houses. That's a good strategy.
The reason why we're in this problem right now. In addition to that, we're in a situation where if you take a look at all that was done in his administration, he didn't do much at all. By the time he left, things were in chaos. Literally chaos. And so we put things back together. We created, I said, those jobs. We make sure we had a situation where we brought down the price of prescription drugs, which is a major issue for many people. To $15 for an insulin shot as opposed to $400. No senior has to pay more than $200 for any drug, all the drugs they conclude beginning next year.
This is a good selling point, I think.
And we're going to make that
I think the prescription drugs thing is probably a bigger one for most people, but I don't know if, like, one of the obvious things to me seems to be that you could change the patenting system a little bit, and that way it wouldn't be so easy for a couple companies to have monopolies on certain kinds of drugs that they could jack up the prices artificially. Why not let other companies produce the drugs? Wouldn't that make it more sense? Is that the kind of thing that the average voter is thinking about when they're watching this? It might not be, but it might be. It might people might still think that this is not quite hitting the fairness principle.
Price around the kitchen table, and that's what we're going to get done.
Thank you, President Trump.
We have the greatest economy in the history of our country. We have never done
greatest.
So well.
That's in the bingo sheet.
Everybody was amazed by it. Other countries were copying us. We got hit with COVID, and when we did, we spent the money necessary so we wouldn't end up in a Great Depression, the likes of which we had in 1929. By the time we finished, so we did a great job. We got a lot of credit for the economy, a lot of credit for the military, and no wars, and so many other things. Everything was rocking good. But the thing we never got the credit for, and we should have, is getting us out of that COVID mess. He created mandates. That was a disaster for our country. But
did he create the mandate? Because the mandate, I feel like people are going to see this as Trump trying to. Maybe this is bad for Trump voters. Do Trump voters blame Trump a little bit for some of the more authoritarian COVID restrictions? Because he was president during 2020. Or do people blame, like, obviously people blame the states the most, but what level are they angry at him? Is this going to be a good play?
Other than that, we had given them back a country where the stock market actually was higher than pre-COVID, and nobody thought that was even possible. The only jobs he created are for illegal immigrants and bounce back jobs, the bounce back from the COVID. He has not done a good job. He's done a poor job, and inflation's killing our country. It is absolutely killing us.
Thank you, President Biden.
Well, look, the greatest economy in the world. He's the only one who thinks that, I think. I don't know anybody else who thinks that we have the greatest economy in the world. And, you know, the fact of the matter is that we found ourselves in a situation where his economy, he rewarded the wealthy. He had the largest tax cut in American history.
Ooh, that's an appeal to fairness.
He raised a deficit larger than any president has in any one term. He's the only president other than Herbert Hoover who's lost more jobs than he had when he began, since Herbert Hoover. The idea that he...
So the obvious retort to that is COVID happened. Really, the only, since the Great Depression, that lost more jobs than they had. That is interesting, but obviously there are some confounding factors there. I have a hard time with statements like this, knowing, like, what is the normal person thinking about? Because I mean, it seems like a fact. It seems like a fact, right? It makes sense to me. But I don't know if it's making sense in, like, the way he's going for. Are people seeing that as sort of something disingenuous?
In the military, you know, when he was president, they were still killing people in Afghanistan. He didn't do anything about that. When he was president, we were still finding ourselves in a position where you had a notion that we were this safe country. The truth is, I'm the only president this century that doesn't have any, this decade, that doesn't have any troops dying anywhere in the world like he did.
President Trump, I want to follow up if I can.
Am I allowed to respond to him?
Well, I'm going to ask you a follow-up. You can do whatever you want with the minute that we give you. I want to follow up. You want to impose a 10% tariff on all goods coming into the U.S. How will you ensure that that doesn't drive prices even higher?
It's not going to drive them higher. It's just going to cost countries that have been ripping us off for years, like China and
appeal to fair. Oh, and China. Oh, that's two spots on the bingo sheet.
Force them to pay us a lot of money, reduce our deficit tremendously, and give us a lot of power for other things. But he made a statement. The only thing he was right about is I gave you the largest tax cut in history. I also gave.
I think that the tariffs are unpopular with Republican voters. He sort of got off the tariffs as quickly as possible. That might be he got off the tariffs as quickly as possible. That might be a really good thing for him. That's interesting. Does he know that, or was he just like itching to respond to what Joey said?
The largest regulation cut in history. That's why we had all the jobs, and the jobs went down, and then they bounced back. And he's taking credit for bounce back jobs. You can't do that. He inherited 9% inflation. No,
you can't do that. It's against the rules.
Inflation, and it stayed that way for 14 months, and then it blew up under his leadership because they spent money like a bunch of people that didn't know what they were doing, and they don't know what they were doing. It was probably the worst administration in history. There's never been. And as far as Afghanistan is concerned, I was getting out of Afghanistan, but we were getting out with dignity, with strength, with power. He got out. It was the most embarrassing day in the history of our country's life.
President Trump, over the last 8 years, under both of your administrations, the national debt soared to record highs. And according to a new...
Okay, so if you watch the Sean Adams show, which if you are one of the 50 people subscribed to my channel, you're most likely one of those people. But the what am I trying to say here? The deficit is the total amount of money in the economy. Or they're talking about the national debt or the deficit. It doesn't matter either way. The national debt is the total amount of money currently circulating, plus the interest on the treasury bonds that the Treasury owes the Federal Reserve. That's what the national debt is. So as long as the economy keeps growing, the national debt's never going to go down. Now, what you can do is if goods aren't going up like they weren't in 2020 because everything was so shut down, you can halt the rate at which you are printing the money, which means at the rate at which the Federal Reserve is buying bonds from the Treasury. That might curb inflation a little bit. Neither of them did that. But just to say, like, the national debt's the highest it's ever been, it's always going to be the highest it's ever been.
Nonpartisan analysis, President Trump, your administration approved $8.4 trillion in new debt. Well, so far, President Biden, you've approved $4.3 trillion in new debt. So, former President Trump, many of the tax cuts that you signed into law are set to expire next year. You want to extend them and go even further, you say. With the U.S. facing trillion-dollar deficits and record debt, why should top earners and corporations...
So, yeah, the deficits are the other thing. The deficits are just... taxes are... You can imagine taxes like all the money that the government needs to finance the debt. So the deficit is just after the taxes are paid off, after we pay the Fed back with the taxes, the deficit is the amount of new money that entered the economy that tax cycle. There's always going to be a bigger deficit. Like, you can bring it down. That would mean like a zero deficit would mean a net zero new currency in the economy, and that's fine. We don't always need currency new currency in the economy. We always need currency in the economy. But like to say that it's net deficit, well, yeah, because the economy is bigger than it's ever, or because the money supply is bigger than it's ever been, and that's not necessarily like a great thing, but that's how it is. Like it's going to keep happening as long as we still need to pay for things.
Because the tax cuts spurred the greatest economy that we've ever seen just prior to COVID. And even after COVID, it was so strong that we were able to get through COVID much better than just about...
Maybe if I put it on 1.5 speed.
Tax spurred. Now, when we cut the taxes, as an
example,
corporate tax was cut down to 21% from 39%, plus beyond that. We took in more revenue with much less tax, and companies were bringing back trillions of dollars back.
More revenue with less tax. That's interesting. That's something called the Laffer curve. It's the idea that at some point the tax rate peaks, and you can, because if you tax 100%, no taxes, so the income is zero. And if you tax 0%, obviously the income is zero. So the question is, at what percentage tax rate does the revenue after taxes peak? And I think what he's trying to say right now is that he found a tax in which we were taxing above the if you're ever taxing above the Laffer curve, you're doing something wrong. So he found a tax, is what he's trying to say, that they were taxing above the Laffer curve.
And we were ready to start paying down debt. We were ready to start using the liquid gold right under our feet, the oil and gas right under our feet. We were going to have something that nobody else has had. We got hit with COVID. We did a lot to fix it. I gave him an unbelievable situation with
anything bad that happened in his administration, he's going to blame on COVID, which might be a good strategy, or people might see that as
under his administration
scapegoating. I mean, it's scapegoating either way, but the question is whether people see it that way.
His administration than our administration, and we were right in the middle of it, something which a lot of people don't like to talk about. But he had far more people dying in his administration. He did the mandate, which is a disaster, mandating it. The vaccine went out. He did a mandate on the vaccine, which is the thing that people most objected to about the vaccine. And he did a very poor job, just a very poor job. And I will tell you, not only poor there, but throughout the entire world, we're no longer respected as a country. They don't respect our leadership. They don't respect the United States anymore. We're like a third world nation between weaponization of his election, trying to go after his political opponent. All of the things he's done, we've become like a third world nation. And it's a shame. The damage he's done to our country. And I'd love to ask him, and will, why he allowed millions of people to come in here from prisons, jails, and mental institutions to come into our country and destroy our country.
Appeal to harm, appeal to purity. He's hitting all the... I mean, I might have a bingo already. I haven't crossing them off yet, but
he had the largest...
that was a lot of moral foundations in a row he hit. I find that very interesting. I mean, is it a good thing? Well, the issue is when you're appealing to purity for something like immigration, it seems like you're calling immigrants dirty, right? Or he didn't say those words, but that's sort of how it comes off. If you are not someone who's sensitive to the disgust mechanism. And you don't ever want to come across as calling like immigrants, like using the framing of they're dirty. I mean, people do use the framing. And they will use the framing. But I'm not convinced that it's a great framing. I mean, I'm not talking about like facts here. I'm talking about the intuitions that they're hitting upon.
He's got $2 trillion tax cut benefited the very wealthy. What I'm going to do is fix the tax system. For example, we have 1,000 trillionaires in America. I mean, billionaires in America. And what's happening? They're in a situation where they, in fact, pay 8.2% in taxes. If they just paid 24%, 25%, either one of those numbers, they'd raise $500 billion, I should say, in a 10-year period. We'd be able to wipe out his debt. We'd be able to help make sure that all those things we need to do, child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our healthcare system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID. Excuse me, with dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump.
That was not.
That was right. He did beat Medicaid.
Oh my God. I don't think that was a long enough stammer for it to check the bingo card part of the stammering on the bingo card. But that was, I mean, it was long. Did beat, and Trump's gonna make fun of that now. Not a good look for Joey over here. I wonder if, do you think that Trump beating up on President Biden makes him seem more mean-spirited than his? I mean, he's always been a mean-spirited guy, but is this like making him come across worse? I mean, who does he need to win over? Suburban housewives? Do they like to see, like two elderly men beating each other up with their canes and their walkers? Do they find this distasteful? Is this like a good strategy? I don't think so.
Beat it to death, and he's destroying Medicare because all of these people are coming in. They're putting them on Medicare. They're putting them on Social Security. They're going to destroy Social Security. This man is going to single-handedly destroy Social Security. These millions and millions of people coming in, they're trying to put them on Social Security. He will wipe out Social Security. He will wipe out Medicare. So he was right in the way he finished that sentence. And it's a shame. What's happened to our country in the last 4 years is not to be believed. Foreign countries, I'm friends with a lot of people. They cannot believe what happened to the United States of America.
A lot of my friends tell me that we're not respected anymore.
We give them everything they want, and they think we're stupid. They think we're very stupid people. What we're doing for other countries, and they do nothing for us. What this man has done is absolutely criminal.
Thank you, President Trump. Dana?
This is the first presidential election since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. This morning, the court ruled on yet another abortion case, temporarily allowing emergency abortions to continue in Idaho, despite that state's restrictive ban. Former President Trump, you take credit for the decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, which returned the issue of abortion to the states.
Abortion. I didn't have that on the bingo sheet. Damn.
Government still plays a role in whether or not women have access to abortion pills. They're used in about 2/3 of all abortions. As president, would you block abortion?
Oh, that's an interesting. When they count abortion, are they counting Plan B? Because some people say Plan B is an abortion pill, and I've heard other people say that it's not. It's not abortive. So when we see those numbers, like 50,000 babies are aborted each year, are they counting the amount of instances people take Plan B? How do they get those numbers? That's interesting. Or are they like later term abortion drugs that she's talking about? That's fascinating.
The Supreme Court just approved the abortion pill, and I agree with their decision to have done that, and I will not block it. And if you look at this whole question that you're asking, complex but not really complex. 51 years ago, you had Roe v. Wade, and everybody wanted to get it back to the states. Everybody, without exception. Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservatives, everybody wanted it back. Religious leaders.
Everybody wanted it. I was just the guy to do it.
Justices on the court, and they happened to vote in favor of killing Roe v. Wade and moving it back to the states. This is something that everybody wanted. Now, 10 years ago or so, they started talking about how many weeks and how many this and getting into other things. But every legal scholar throughout the world, the most respected, wanted it brought back to the states. I did that. Now the states are working it out. If you look at Ohio, it was a decision that was an end result that was a little bit more liberal than you would have thought. Kansas, I would say the same thing. Texas is different. Florida is different. But they're all making their own decisions right now. And right now, the states control it.
Would you consider this an appeal to liberty?
I'm a person that believes. And frankly,
is that what's happening right now? Is appealing to
some people don't believe in that.
the like layers of separations of powers? Does that count as an appeal to liberty? Some people think some people view that like, I don't know what you'd call it. I'm doing a Joey right now. The separation of layers of federalism as like a key part of libertarianism. I wonder if this appeal. I mean, Sitch and Adam didn't think that the separation mattered to them much at all when they talked about it.
You have to get elected also, and because that has to do with other things. You got to get elected.
Do people not care that much about it?
Because they will take the life of a child in the 8th month, the 9th month, and even after birth. After birth, if you look at the former governor of Virginia, he was willing to do this. He said, we'll put the baby aside and we'll determine what we do with the baby, meaning we'll kill the baby. What happened is we brought it back to the states, and the country is now coming together on this issue. It's been a great thing.
Thank you. President Biden?
It's been a terrible thing, what you've done. The fact is that the vast majority of constitutional scholars supported Roe when it was decided. Supported Roe. And that's this idea that they're all against it is just ridiculous. And
I'm watching it at 2x speed if you're wondering why he's talking so fast.
6 weeks. You don't even know whether you're pregnant or not, but you cannot see a doctor, have your and have him decide on what your circumstances are, whether you need help. The idea that states are able to do this is a little like saying we're going to turn civil
That's
rights
nice.
back to the states. Let each state have a different rule. Look, there's so many young women who have been, including a young woman who just was murdered, and he went to the funeral.
Dark mode
And
is fine.
the idea that she was murdered by an immigrant coming in, they talk about that. But here's the deal: there's a lot of young women who are being raped by their in-laws, by their spouses.
Yes,
sisters,
I think
by-
that. I mean, it's always good when the appeal you're making is like true. You don't want to be like making false appeals. So whenever people say like, this person was assaulted by an immigrant, and I think a good retort to that is, you're more likely to be assaulted by someone you know. Therefore, that's what we should be focusing our energy on. I think this is a decent retort. I think it's gonna get the harm
They can do nothing
centers.
about it. And they try to arrest them when they cross state lines.
Thank you.
There have been many young women murdered by the same people he allows to come across our border. We have a border that's the most dangerous place anywhere in the world, considered the most dangerous place anywhere in the world. And he opened it up, and these killers are coming into our country, and they are raping and killing women. And it's a terrible thing. As far as the abortion is concerned, it is now back with the states. The states are voting. In many cases, it's frankly a very liberal decision. In many cases, it's the opposite. But they're voting, and it's bringing it back to the vote of the people, which is what everybody wanted, including the founders, if they knew about this issue, which frankly they didn't. But they would have. Everybody wanted it brought back. Ronald Reagan wanted it brought back. He wasn't able to get it. Everybody wanted it brought back, and many presidents had tried to get it back. I was the one to do it. And again, this gives it the vote of the people, and that's where they wanted it. Every legal scholar wanted it that way.
Staying on the topic of abortion, President Biden, 7 states, I'll let you do that. This is the same topic. 7 states have no legal restrictions on how far into a pregnancy a woman can obtain an abortion. Do you support any legal limits on how late a woman should be able to terminate a pregnancy?
I supported Roe v. Wade, which had 3 trimesters. First time is between the woman and the doctor. Second time is between the doctor and an extreme situation. The third time is between the doctor, between the woman and the state. The idea that the politicians, that the founders wanted the politicians to be the ones making decisions about women's health is ridiculous. That's the last. No politician should be making that decision. A doctor should be making those decisions. That's how it should be run.
Right. That's
what should be
appealing
done. And
to
I'm gonna restore Roe v. Wade.
authority of the authority of the founding fathers.
Can
That's a good strategy.
take the life of the baby in the 9th month and even after birth, because some states, Democrat run, take it after birth. Again, the former governor of Virginia, put the baby down, then we decide what to do with it. So he's willing to, as we say, rip the baby out of the womb in the 9th month and kill the baby. Nobody wants that to happen, Democrat or Republican. Nobody wants it to happen.
That is simply not true. The Roe v. Wade does not provide for that. That's not the circumstance. Only if a woman's life is in danger, she's going to die. That's the only circumstance in which that can happen. But we are not for late-term abortion, period.
With Roe v. Wade, you have late-term abortion. You can do whatever you want, depending on the state. You can do whatever you want. We don't think that's a good thing. We think it's a radical thing. We think the Democrats are the radicals, not the Republicans.
For 51 years, that was the law. 51 years, constitutional scholarship said it was the right way to go. 51 years, and it was taken away because this guy put very conservative members on the Supreme Court. He takes credit for taking it away. What's he going to do? What's he going to do, in fact, if the MAGA Republicans, he gets elected, and the MAGA Republicans control the Congress, and they pass a universal ban on abortion, period, across the board, at 6 weeks or 7 or 8 or 10 weeks, something very, very conservative. Is he going to sign that bill? I'll veto it. He'll sign it.
Thank you.
Let's turn now to the issue of immigration and border security.
Oh, that's he tries to talk even though his mic is muted.
Overwhelming border states and overburdened
Is that-
such as New York and Chicago.
Is he going to accuse the commentators of being biased because they let
why should voters trust you
Biden talk
Because we worked very hard to get a
during
bipartisan
Trump's
agreement
time, but
that
they
not
didn't
only
let the other way
changed
happen?
all of that. We made sure that we are in a situation where.
I mean, I don't think anybody's mind was going to be changed by that little
border police are now.
that little
Significantly
interaction, but
increased the
still.
number of asylum officers. Significantly, by the way, the border patrol endorsed my position. In addition to that, we find ourselves in a situation where, when he was president, he was separating babies from their mothers, putting them in cages, making sure the families were separated. That's not
Appeal to harm.
What I've done since
Good move.
I've changed the law, what's happened? I've changed it in a way that now you're in a situation where there are 40% fewer people coming across.
Appeal to
the
care
border.
harm.
It's better than when he left.
It's an
office.
accusation of harm, not an appeal to care, but you're
Um,
hitting the same moral foundation.
More border patrol and more.
So, yeah, an accusation of harm for the purposes of how I'm considering it is the same as an appeal to care. So he's saying, I would give you abortion rights. He would oppress you. That's a liberty. The care is, we're going to give you medical treatment. That's care. the attack of harm is he's locking up kids at the border. That's the appeal to harm. I mean, it's a strategy. I mean, I think it's pretty good for the base, but I don't know. It's always hard to tell.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look, we had the safest border in the history of our country. The border, all he had to do was leave it. All he had to do was leave it. He decided to open up our border, open up our country to people that are from prisons, people that are from mental institutions, insane asylum, terrorists. We have the largest number of terrorists coming into our country right now. All terrorists, all over the world, not just in South America, all over the world. They come from the Middle East, everywhere, all over the world. They're pouring in. And this guy just left it open. And he didn't need legislation because I didn't have legislation. I said, close the border. We had the safest border in history. In that final couple of months of my presidency, we had, according to Border Patrol, who is great, and by the way, who endorsed me for president, but I won't say that, but they endorsed me for president.
I'm not going to say it, but it happened.
But look, we had the safest border in history. Now we have the worst border in history. There's never been anything like it. And people are dying all over the place, including the people that are coming up in caravans.
President Trump. President Biden?
The only terrorist who's done anything crossing the border is one who came along and killed three, under his administration, killed an Al-Qaeda person come in his administration, killed three American soldiers. That's the only terrorist that's there. I'm not saying that no terrorists ever got through, but the idea they're emptying their prisons, we're welcoming these people, that's simply not true. There's no data to support what he said. Once again, he's exaggerating, he's lying.
Go get something.
President Trump, staying on the topic of immigration, you said that you're going to carry out, quote, the largest domestic deportation operation in American history, unquote. Does that mean that you will deport every undocumented immigrant in America, including those who have jobs, including those whose spouses are citizens, and including those who have lived here for decades? And if so, how will you do it?
Just 1 second. He said we killed 3 people. The people we killed are al-Baghdadi and Soleimani, the 2 greatest terrorists, biggest terrorists anywhere in the world. And it had a huge impact on everything, not just border, on everything. He's the one that killed people with a bad border, including hundreds of thousands of people dying and also killing our citizens when they come in. We are living right now in a rat's nest. They're killing our people in New York,
hundreds of thousands,
and every state in the union, because we don't have borders anymore. Every state is now a border.
I mean, I think that whenever you do some sort of, what's the word? God damn it. Exaggerate? No, hyperbole. Whenever you do hyperbole like that, I think it actually loses people. I mean, the idea that hundreds of thousands of people are dying because of the immigration situation, it's excessive, and it might make him seem like a liar. And he doesn't need to be seeming like a liar right now. I think I'm going to run real quick. I'm going to get a beverage, and then I'll come back. I'm not going to play it, even though I don't think it's that big of a deal. I'm not going to play. I'll actually remove it from the screen. I'll be back. All right, I'm back. I bought like popcorn and energy drinks for this debate, but since I'm the only one here, I can't like stop and go make some.
Because of his ridiculous, insane, and very stupid policies, people are coming in and they're killing our citizens at a level that we've never seen. We call it migrant crime. I call it Biden migrant crime. They're killing our citizens at a level that we've never seen before.
I don't think that counts.
And you're reading it like these 3 incredible young girls over the last few days. One of them, I just spoke to the mother, and he just had the funeral for this girl, 12 years old. This is horrible what's taken place. What's taken place in our country, we're literally an uncivilized country now. He doesn't want it to be. He just doesn't know. He opened the borders. Nobody's ever seen anything like. And we have to get a lot of these people out, or we have to get them out fast because they're going to destroy our country. Just take a look at where they're living. They're living in luxury hotels in New York City and other places. Our veterans are on the street. They're dying because he doesn't care about our veterans. He doesn't care
Appeal to
he doesn't like the
fairness. That's
military
good.
at all. And he doesn't care about our veterans. Nobody been worse. I had the highest approval rating for veterans taking care of the VA. He has the worst. He's gotten rid of all the things that I approved. Choice that I got through Congress, all of the different things I approved, they abandoned. We had by far the highest, and now it's down in less than half because he's done all these great things that we did. And I think he did it just because I approved it, which is crazy. But he has killed so many people at our border by allowing all of these people to come in. And it's a very sad day in America.
President Biden, you have the mic.
Every single thing he said is a lie. Every single one. For example, veterans are a hell of a lot better off since I passed the PACT Act. 1 million of them now have insurance, and their families have it. Their families have it because what happened, whether it was Agent Orange or burn pits, they're all being covered now. And he opposed his.
He's going to talk about.
We're also in a situation where we have great respect for veterans. My son spent a year in Iraq.
There we go. Did I forget Bo on the bingo sheet? That's another thing.
I was recently in France for D-Day, and I spoke all about those heroes that died. I went to the World War II cemetery, World War I cemetery he refused to go to. He was standing with his four-star general, and he told me, he said, I don't want to go in there because they're a bunch of losers and suckers. My son was not a loser, was not a sucker. You're the sucker. You're the loser.
President Trump?
First of all, that was a made-up quote, suckers and losers. They made it up. It was in a third-rate magazine that's failing, like many of these magazines. He made that up. He put it in commercials. We've notified him. We had 19 people that said I didn't say it. And think of this. Who would say I'm at a cemetery or I'm talking about our veterans? Because nobody's taken better care. I'm so glad this came up, and he brought it up. There's nobody that's taken better care of our soldiers than I have. To think that I would, in front of generals and others, say suckers and losers. We have 19 people.
I wonder if... Okay, is this going to play as his righteous anger from Biden's side, or is this going to be? I mean, are people believing that this is a made-up quote? Like when people are seeing this, are people looking at this and being like, "Oh yeah, that doesn't make sense"? Because I feel like people who are already predisposed to hate Trump, they're going to believe it, but people who are maybe find him distasteful might hear that quote and think that seems a little extreme even for him, and they're going to wonder.
That said, it was never said by me. It was made up by him, just like Russia was made up, just like the 51 intelligence agents are made up, just like the new thing with the 16 economists are talking. It's the same thing. 51 intelligence agents said that the laptop was Russia disinformation. It wasn't. That came from his son, Hunter. It wasn't Russia disinformation. He made up the suckers and losers, so he should apologize to me right now.
Four-star general standing to your side who was on your staff who said you said it, period. That's number one. And number two, the idea that I have to apologize to you for anything along the line. We've done more for veterans than any president has in American history. And they now are in their family. The only sacred obligation we have as a country is to care for our veterans when they come home and their families and equip them when they go to war. That's what we're doing. That's what the VA is doing now. They're doing more for veterans than ever before in our history.
I think this places righteous anger. That's the intuition I'm getting.
With Russia's war
I don't think this places
which is now in its third year.
Biden being like a cynical,
Trump,
doesn't care if he's lying. I think this comes off as
Putin says he'll only end this war.
I think that this is that's gonna play
territory it has already claimed, and Ukraine abandons its bid to join NATO. Are Putin's terms acceptable to you?
First of all,
that's going to come off as...
And our soldiers can't stand this guy.
Good.
They can't stand him. They think he's the worst commander-in-chief, if that's what you call him, that we've ever had. They can't stand him.
He's
straight.
Appealing to like the crowd.
Just about any of them.
He's saying, I'm not saying it. Other people say
every single bit of information. As far as Russia and Ukraine, if we had a real president, the president that was respected by Putin, he would have never invaded Ukraine. A lot of people are dead right now, much more than people know. You know, they talk about numbers. You can double those numbers, maybe triple those numbers. He did nothing to stop it. In fact, I think he encouraged Russia from going in. I'll tell you what happened. He was so bad with Afghanistan. It was such a horrible embarrassment, most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, that when Putin watched that and he saw the incompetence, that he should have fired those generals, like I fired the one that you mentioned. And so he's got no love lost, but he should have fired those generals. No general got fired for the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, Afghanistan, where we left billions of dollars of equipment behind. We lost 13 beautiful soldiers, and 38 soldiers were obliterated. And by the way, we left people behind too. We left American citizens behind. When Putin saw that,
he's talking about Afghanistan. That's another thing on the bingo sheet.
Maybe this was his dream. I talked to him about it. His dream. The difference is he never would have invaded Ukraine. Never. Just like Israel would have never been invaded.
In a
million years by Hamas. You know why? Because
I don't think this, like, optically, that this flips what people might have been thinking about the two of them. Because now he's trying to say, look, we were talking about soldiers, we were talking about our vets, and now we're the opposite. Now it's like, hey, you're the one who's harming our vets. I'm trying to help them. But I don't know. Trump's kind of funny. I don't think he's very good. His charisma
Iran
comes
was
off
broke with me.
when
I
he's
wouldn't
talking
let
about
anybody do
this type
business
of
with them. They
topic.
ran out of money. They were broke. They had no money for Hamas. They had no money for anything. No money for terror. That's why you had no terror at all during my administration. This place, the whole world is blowing up under him.
President Biden?
Never heard so much malarkey in my whole life. Look, the fact of the matter is that we're in a situation where,
Malarkey.
let's take the last one
Hey,
first.
that's in the
Go in,
bingo.
attack American troops, cause brain damage for a number of these troops, and he did nothing about it. Recently, when he was president, they attacked. He said they're just having headaches. That's all it is. He didn't do a thing when the attack took place. Number one. Number two, we got over 100,000 Americans and others out of Afghanistan during that airlift. Number three, we found ourselves in a situation where, if you take a look at what Trump did in Ukraine, this guy told Trump, do whatever you want and do whatever you want. And that's exactly what Trump did. To Putin encourage him, do whatever you want. And he went in. And listen to what he said when he went in. He was going to take Kyiv in 5 days, remember? Because it's part of the old Soviet Union. That's what he wanted to reestablish, Kyiv. And he, in fact, didn't do it at all. He didn't able to get it done. And they've lost thousands and thousands of troops, 500,000 troops.
President Trump,
I never said that.
For 1 minute. I just want to go back to my original question, which is, are Putin's terms acceptable to you? Keeping the territory in Ukraine?
No, they're not acceptable. But look, this is a war that never should have started. If we had a leader in this war, he led everybody along. He's given $200 billion now or more to Ukraine. He's given $200 billion. That's a lot of money. I don't think there's ever been anything like it. Every time that Zelensky comes to this country, he walks away with $60 billion. He's the greatest salesman ever. And I'm not knocking him. I'm not knocking anything. I'm only saying the money that we're spending on this war, and we shouldn't be spending, it should have never happened. I will have that war settled between Putin and Zelensky as president-elect before I take office on January 20th. I'll have that war settled. People being killed so needlessly, so stupidly, and I will get it settled. And
He's
I'll get it settled
anti-war,
before
but
I take office.
President Biden, you have a minute.
The fact is that Putin is a war criminal. He's killed thousands and thousands.
I think, okay, Trump is not. I don't know if he's coming out as hard as people are going to want him to. I mean, we'll see. I feel like people might still have the idea that he's sort of
clear. He
in
wants to
bed with
reestablish
Russia.
what was part of the Soviet Empire, not just a piece. He wants all of Ukraine. That's what he wants. And then you think he'll stop there? Do you think he'll stop when if he takes Ukraine? What do you think happens to Poland? What do you think of Belarus? What do you think happens to those NATO countries? And so if you want a war, you ought to find out what he's going to do, because if in fact he does what he says and walks away, by the way, all that money we give Ukraine and weapons we make here in the United States, we give them the weapons, not the money at this point. And our NATO allies have produced as much funding for Ukraine as we have. That's why we're strong.
Thank you. Moving on to the Middle East. In October, Hamas attacked Israel, killing more than 1,000 people and taking hundreds of hostages. Among those held and thought to still be alive are 5 Americans. Israel's response has killed thousands of Palestinians and created a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. President Biden, you've put forward a proposal to resolve this conflict, but so far, Hamas has not released the remaining hostages, and Israel is continuing its military offensive in Gaza. So what additional leverage will you use to get Hamas and Israel to end the war? You have 2 minutes.
Number one, everyone from the United Nations Security Council straight through to the G7 to the Israelis and Netanyahu himself have endorsed the plan they put forward, which has 3 stages to it. The first stage is trade the hostages for a ceasefire. Second phase is a ceasefire with additional conditions. The third phase is the end of the war. The only one who wants the war to continue is Hamas, number one. They're the only ones standing out. We're still pushing hard to get them to accept. In the meantime, what's happened? In Israel, we're finding the only thing I've denied Israel was 2,000-pound bombs. They don't work very well in populated areas. They kill a lot of innocent people. We're providing Israel with all the weapons they need and when they need them. And by the way, I'm the guy that organized the world against Iran when they had a full-blown intercontinental ballistic missile attack on Israel. No one was hurt. No one Israeli was accidentally killed, and it just stopped. We saved Israel. We are the biggest producer of support for Israel of anyone in the world. And so they're 2 different things. Hamas can.
How is this going to come off is how I'm wondering. Is this going to be like enough hedging? Is this going to be enough hedging to put people at rest? Like, The Israel thing is a huge split in the Democratic Party right now. It seems like some of the younger, more internet-brained people are really anti-Israel, and some of the establishment Dems are very pro-Israel.
Not allowed to be continued. We continue to send
So we have no idea.
and I'm telling
I have
people,
no
if you
idea
call
how
them
that's
get
going to
Hamas
play out.
like we did bin Laden. You don't have to do it. And by the way, they've been greatly weakened, Hamas, greatly weakened, and they should be. They should be eliminated. But you've got to be careful for what using certain weapons among population centers.
Just going back to Ukraine for 1 second. We have an ocean separating us. The European nations together have spent 100 billion, or maybe more than that, less than us. Why doesn't he call them and say, you got to put up your money like I did with NATO? I got them to put up hundreds of billions of dollars. The Secretary General of NATO said Trump did the most incredible job I've ever seen. They wouldn't have any. They were going out of business. We were spending almost 100% of the money was paid by us. He didn't do that. He's getting all. You got to ask these people to put up the money. We're over $100 billion more spent, and it has a bigger impact on them because of location, because we have an ocean in between. You got to ask them. As far as Israel and Hamas, Israel's the one that wants to go. He said the only one who wants to keep going is Hamas. Actually, Israel is the one, and you should let him go and let him finish the job. He doesn't want to do it. He's become like a Palestinian, but they don't like him because he's a very bad Palestinian. He's a weak one.
President Biden, you have a minute.
I've never heard so much foolishness. This is a guy who wants to get out of NATO. You're going to stay in NATO? He's going to pull out of NATO. The idea that we have our strength lies in our alliances as well. It may be a big ocean, but if we're ever able to avoid a war in Europe, a major war in Europe, what happens if, in fact, you have Putin continue to go into NATO? We have an Article 5 agreement. Attack on one is attack on all. You want to start the nuclear war he keeps talking about, go ahead. Let Putin go in and control Ukraine and then move on to Poland and other places. See what happens then. He has no idea what the hell he's talking about. And by the way, I got 50 other nations around the world to support Ukraine, including Japan and South Korea, because they understand that this kind of dislocation has a serious threat to the whole world peace. No major war in Europe has ever been able to be contained just to Europe.
President Trump, just to follow up, would you support the creation of an independent Palestinian state in order to achieve peace in the region?
I'd have to see, but before we do,
This is interesting. They're both saying that it's not interesting, of course. They're both saying that they would be the better president on how to deal with these foreign conflict issues, but they're not really saying how.
do that. The problem we have is that we spend all the money. So they kill us on trade. I made great trade deals with the European nations because if you add them up, they're about the same size economically. Their economy is about the same size as the United States. And they were no cars.
Right, the EU.
No, they don't want anything that we have, but we're supposed to take their cars, their food, their everything, their agriculture. I changed that. But the big thing I changed is they don't want to pay.
Well,
And the only reason that he can play games with NATO is because I got them to put up hundreds of billions of dollars. I said, and he's right about this. I said, no, I'm not going to support NATO if you don't pay. They asked me that question. Would you guard us against Russia at a very secret meeting of the 28 states at that time, nations at that time? And they said, no, if you don't pay, I won't do that. And you know what happened? Billions and billions of dollars came flowing in the next day and the next months. But now we're in the same position. We're paying everybody's bills.
Let's turn to the issue of democracy. Former President Trump, I want to ask you about January 6, 2021. After you rallied your supporters that day, some of them stormed the Capitol to stop the constitutionally mandated counting of electoral votes. As president, you swore an oath to, quote, preserve, protect, and defend, unquote, the Constitution. What do you say to voters who believe that you violated that oath through your actions and
kind of like
inaction
Jit
on January 6th, and worry that you'll do it again?
yellow
I don't know if
tie
anybody
he's
believed
wearing.
that. And let me tell you about January 6th. On January 6th, we had a great border. Nobody coming through, very few. On January 6th, we were energy independent. On January 6th, we had the lowest taxes ever. We had the lowest regulations ever. On January 6th, we were respected all over the world. All over the world, we were respected. And then he comes in, and we're now laughed at. We're like a bunch of stupid people. What happened to the United States' reputation under this man's leadership is horrible, including weaponization, which I'm sure at some point you'll be talking about, where he goes after his political opponent because he can't beat him fair and square.
You have 80 seconds left. My question was, what do you say to those voters who believe that you violated your constitutional oath through your actions and inaction on January 6, 2021, and worry that you'll do it again?
Well, I didn't say that to anybody. I said peacefully and patriotically. And Nancy Pelosi, if you just watched the news from 2 days ago, on tape to her daughter, who's a documentary filmmaker, they say, but she's saying, oh, no, it's my responsibility. I was responsible for this. Because I offered her 10,000 soldiers or National Guard, and she turned them down. And the mayor of, in writing, by the way, the mayor, in writing, turned it down, the mayor of D.C. They turned it down. I offered
Really
10,000 because
election
I could see
tourism yet.
virtually nothing to do. They asked me to go make a speech. I could see what was happening. Everybody was saying they're going to be there on January 6th. They're going to be there. And I said, you know what? There's a lot of people coming. You could feel it. You could feel it too, and you could feel it. And I said, they ought to have some National Guard or whatever. And I offered it to her, and she now admits that she turned it down. And it was the same day she.
I wonder how this plays. Like, so he's saying, "Hey, man, I offered the National Guard, and they said no." Like, he's trying to make it seem like he's not quite like implying that they wanted January 6th to happen yet. He's just saying he's calling everyone else he's incompetent. He's like, I was competent. I could have stopped it, but they didn't let me.
The daughter, because it made her into a liar. She said, I take full responsibility for January 6th.
I'll turn up.
President Biden?
Look, he encouraged those folks to go up to Capitol Hill, number one. I sat in the dining room off the Oval Office. He sat there for 3 hours 3 hours watching, being begged by his vice president and a number of his colleagues on the Republican side as well to do something, to call for a stop, to end it. Instead, they talked about these people being patriots and great patrons of America. In fact, he says he'll not forgive them for what they've done. They've been convicted. He says he wants to commute their sentences and say that no. He went to every single court in the nation. I don't know how many cases, scores of cases, including the Supreme Court, and they said no, this guy is responsible for doing what was done. He didn't do a damn thing, and these people should be in jail, and they should be the ones who are being held accountable. And he wants to let them all out. And now he says if he loses again, such a whiner that he is, that there could be a bloodbath.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
What they've done to some people that are so innocent, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. What you have done, how you've destroyed the lives of so many people. When they ripped down Portland, when they ripped down many other cities, you go to Minnesota, Minneapolis, what they've done there with the fires all over the city. If I didn't bring in the National Guard, that city would have been destroyed. When you look at all of they took over big chunks of Seattle. I was all set to bring in the National Guard. They heard that. They saw them coming and they left immediately. What he said about this whole subject is so off. Peacefully patriotic. One other thing. The Unselect Committee, which is basically two horrible Republicans that are all gone now out of office, and Democrats, all Democrats, they destroyed and deleted all of the information they found because they found out we were right. We were right. And they deleted and destroyed all of the information. They should go to jail for that. If a Republican did that, they'd go to jail.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden, I want to give you a minute.
Well, that was an appeal to fairness. It was also like a conspiracy theory that it's weird for the president to be the conspiracy theorist, right? He's the one putting out that everyone's out to get him. And to some degree, they might be. It's very, very strange. I don't know if it... I'm sure his base will like it. Everything so far seems to be like, I'm sure your base will like that, but are you winning voters right now? Is this really just a race to see who can get their base the most energized and keep the other one's base off of them? Because that's like... I figured, like, we all knew that was going to be how it played out, but it's disappointing to see.
The only person on this stage is a convicted felon is the man I'm looking at right now.
Convicted felon. That's a bingo.
He's telling you simply not true. The fact is that there was no...
it's not, no, that's not a bingo yet.
What was going on up in Capitol Hill.
It's a space in the bingo sheet.
Every one of those who are convicted deserves to be convicted. The idea that they didn't kill somebody, just went in and broke down doors, broke the windows, occupied offices, turned over desks, turned them over statues. The idea that those people are patriots, come on. When I asked him the first two debates we had, first time around, I said, "Will you?"
I think that's an appeal to purity. He's appealing.
He's refusing. Will you denounce these guys?
To the Capitol Hill is somewhere.
Attack that Capitol. What are you going to do?
Somewhere sacred.
I'm going to give you a minute.
Because Trump hasn't done appeal. It's weird that the left winger would do.
Of 34 felonies.
I guess I did kind of say he didn't appeal to purity.
Every right to go after, unquote, your political opponents. You just talked about members of the Select Committee on January 6th going to jail. Your main political opponent is standing on stage with you tonight. Can you clarify exactly what it means about you feeling you have every right to go after your political opponents?
Well, I said my retribution is going to be success. We're going to make this country successful again, because right now it's a failing nation. My retribution is going to be success. But when he talks about a convicted felon, his son is a convicted felon at a very high level. His son is convicted, going to be convicted probably numerous other times. Should have been convicted before, but his Justice Department let limitations lapse on the most important things. But he could be a convicted felon as soon as he gets out of office. Joe.
Is he trying to say that it's not a big deal because everyone's a convicted felon? Where's Hunter? I mean, so far, the bingo sheets, it seems like Trump's being a little bit more stereotypical than Biden here. I can't just share multiple screens at the same time. Hey, whatever.
Could be a convicted felon with all of the things that he's done. He's done horrible things. All of the death caused at the border, telling the Ukrainian people that we're going to want $1 billion or you change the prosecutor. Otherwise, you're not getting $1 billion. If I ever said that, that's quid pro quo. That we're not going to do anything. We're not going to give you $1 billion unless you change your prosecutor having to do with the son. This man is a criminal. This man, you're lucky. You're lucky. I did nothing wrong. We'd have a system that was rigged and disgusting. I did nothing wrong.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden, you have said, I'm coming right to you, sir. You want to respond? Go ahead. I'll give you a minute to respond.
The idea that I did anything wrong relative to what you're talking about is outrageous. It's simply a lie, number one. Number two, the idea that you have a right to seek retribution against any American just because you're president is wrong. It's simply wrong. No president's ever spoken like that.
Here's something I'm noticing. People seem to have no expectations for President Biden during this debate. And he's relatively sharp. I mean, relative to like the moments he's still slurring his words. He's still not doing great, but I think he might be outperforming what most people thought of him. And that's actually It's not good for Trump. It's good if he's more cognizant than most people thought he was, unless he's like super high, which I mean, people were saying whoever has the most dilated pupils.
Number 3, the crimes that you are still charged with. And think of all the civil penalties you have. How many billions of dollars do you owe in civil penalties for molesting a woman in public, for doing a whole range of things?
I mean, when you're in the spotlights, your pupils should be wide because they're so bright. So what you're trying to see is.
I didn't have sex with a porn star, number 1. Number 2, that was a case that was started and
I never did that, but if I did, it would have been awesome.
Into the Manhattan DA's office to start that case. That case is going to be appealed and won. We had a very terrible judge, a horrible judge, Democrat. The prosecutor were all high-ranking Democrats, appointed people, and both the civil and the criminal. He basically went after his political opponent because he thought it was going to damage me. But when the public found out about these cases, because they understand it better than he does, he has no idea what these cases are. But when they found out about these cases, you know what they did? My poll numbers went up, way up. You know that because you're reporting it. And we took in more money in the last 2 weeks than we've ever taken in the history of any campaign. I don't think any campaign has ever taken hundreds of millions of dollars came pouring in because the public knows
it's a very small pupil.
And it's a guy that's after his political.
That might be because he's old.
Fair and square.
I don't know if it's really fair to say he's on drugs because he seems sharper than normal, and he's.
Do you believe that the tens of millions of Americans who are likely to vote for President Trump will be voting against American democracy?
The more they know about what he's done, yes. The more they know about what he's done. And there's a lot more coming. He's got a lot of cases down the road coming out. He's got a whole range of issues he has to face.
Appeal to democracy.
But I do know he has a real problem. And so the fact that, could you ever think you heard any president say that I'm going to seek retribution? You ever hear any president say that I thought Hitler had some good ideas? What got me involved around the first place after my son had died, I decided in Iraq, because of Iraq, I said I wasn't going to run again until I saw what happened in Charlottesville, Virginia. People coming out of the woods carrying swastikas on torches, and singing the same anti-Semitic bile they sang when back in Germany. And the young woman got killed. I spoke to the mother, and they asked him. They said, "What do you think of those people? The people the ones who got killed, the one who tried to stop it, and the ones he said, I think they're fine people on both sides."
Fine people? Oh, I should have put that in the bingo sheet. Do you think that Biden, that was a clearly made up anecdote, right? That wasn't actually how the fine people quote happened. Do you think that the fact that Biden seems to talk about, rather than talk about ideas, he talks about interactions he's had, is that a sign of mental decay, or is that just how he likes to phrase
American
things?
President would ever say Nazis coming out of fields carrying torches, singing the same anti-Semitic bile, carrying swastikas were fine people. This is a guy who says Hitler's done some good things. I'd like to know what they are. The good things Hitler's done, that's what he said. This guy has no sense for American democracy.
President Trump.
Jake, both of you know that story has been totally wiped out because when you see the sentence, it said 100% exoneration on that. So he just keeps it going. He says he ran because of Charlottesville. He didn't run because of Charlottesville. He ran because it was his last chance. He's not equipped to be president. You know it, and I know it. It's ridiculous. We have a debate. We're trying to justify his presidency. His presidency, he's without question the worst presidency in the history of our country. We shouldn't be having a debate about it. There's nothing to debate. He made up the Charlottesville story, and you'll see it's debunked all over the place. Every reasonable anchor has debunked it. And just the other day, it came out where it was fully debunked. It's a nonsense story. He knows that, and he didn't run because of Charlottesville. He used that as an excuse to run.
President Biden.
And debunked. It happened. All you have to do is listen to what was said at the time. And the idea that somehow that's the only reason I ran because I was worried a guy like this guy could get elected. If he thought they were good people coming out of that forest, carrying those woods, carrying those torches, then he didn't deserve to be president. Didn't deserve to be president at all. And the idea that he's talking about all this being fabricated, we saw with our own eyes. We saw what happened on January 6th. We saw the people breaking through the windows. We saw people occupying his own vice president. Look, there's a reason why 40 of his 44 top cabinet officers refused to endorse him this time. His vice president hasn't endorsed him this time. So why? Why? They know him well. They serve with him. Why are they not endorsing him?
Thank you, President Biden. We're going to be right back with more from the CNN presidential debate.
Are less than white families. Black mothers are still 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related causes, and Black Americans are imprisoned at 5 times the rate of white Americans. What do you say to Black voters who are disappointed that you haven't made more progress?
They acknowledge they made a lot of progress, number one. The fact of the matter is there's more small Black businesses that have been started than any time in history. Number two, the wages of Black unemployment is the lowest level it's been in a long, long time. Number three, we're providing housing for Black Americans and dealing with the segregation that exists among these corporate operations that collude to keep people out of their houses. And in addition to that, we find that the impact on
I mean, the issue with citing like how well they're doing in the economy right now is that people have this perception, whether it's true or false, that the economy isn't doing great. And if your thing for here's how I've helped Black people, look at the economy. If it doesn't even matter how good they're actually doing, if their perception is that the economy is bad right now, that is going to come off poorly.
The choice that Black families have to make relative to childcare is incredibly difficult. When we did the first major piece of legislation in the past, I was able to reduce Black childcare costs. I cut them in half. We got to make sure we provide for childcare costs. We got to make sure, because when you provide those childcare protections, you increase economic growth because more people can be in the job market. So there's more to be done, considerably more to be done. But we've done a great deal so far, and I'm not letting up, and they know it.
You have 49 seconds left. What do you say to Black voters who are disappointed with the progress so far?
I say I don't blame them for being disappointed. Inflation is still hurting them badly. For example, I provided for the idea that any Black family, first-time home buyer, should get a $10,000 tax credit to be able to buy their first home so they can get started. I made sure that we're in a situation where all those Black families and those Black individuals who had to take out student loans that were ballooning, that if they were engaged in nursing, doctor, and anything having to do with volunteerism, if they paid their bills for 10 years on their student debt, all the rest is forgiven after 10 years. Millions have benefited from that. And we're going to do a whole lot more for Black families.
Thank you, President Trump.
And he caused the inflation. He's blaming inflation, and he's right. It's been very bad. He caused the inflation, and it's killing Black families and Hispanic families and just about everybody. It's killing people. They can't buy groceries anymore. They can't. You look at the cost of food where it's doubled and tripled and quadrupled. They can't live. They're not living anymore. He caused this inflation. I gave him a country with essentially no inflation. It was perfect. It was so good. All he had to do is leave it alone. He destroyed it with his Green New Scam and all this money that's being thrown out the window. He caused inflation. As sure as you're sitting there, the fact is that his big kill on the Black people is the millions of people that he's allowed to come in through the border. They're taking Black jobs now, and it could be 18, it could be 19, and even 20 million people. They're taking Black jobs, and they're taking Hispanic jobs, and you haven't seen it yet, but you're going to see something that's going to be the worst in our history.
Thank you. President Biden?
There was no inflation when I became president. You know why? The economy was flat on its back. 50% unemployment. He decimated the economy, absolutely decimated the economy. That's why there was no inflation at the time. There were no jobs. We provided thousands of millions of jobs for individuals who were in all communities, including minority communities. We made sure that.
So is he trying to make, I don't understand this. Is he trying to make the claim that the inflation is the side effect of the recovery after COVID? Because the whole thing with COVID is that they were spending as much money. I talked about this earlier, but they were spending as much money, but there was no production from the goods and services side. So that's what was causing inflation. So Trump was like lying there because there was inflation under COVID, and there was more of it under Biden. Both of them seem to not really understand the inflation situation, which I mean, it seems so strange because that is the biggest issue for a lot of people.
That they have health insurance. We have covered, if the ACA has increased, I made sure that they're $8,000 per person in a family to get written off for health care. But this guy wants to eliminate that. They tried 50 times. He wants to get rid of the ACA again, and they're going to try again if they win. We find ourselves in a position where the idea that we're not doing anything, we put more police on the street than any administration has. He wants to cut the cops. We're providing for equity and making sure people have a shot to make it. There's a lot going on. But in inflation, he caused it by his tremendous malfeasance in the way he handled the pandemic.
Thank you. Another persistent challenge is the climate crisis. 2023 was the hottest year in recorded history, and communities across the country are confronting the devastating effects of extreme heat, intensifying wildfires, stronger hurricanes, and rising sea levels. Former President Trump, you've vowed to end your opponent's climate initiatives, but will you take any action as president to slow the climate crisis?
Let me just go back to what he said about the police. how close the police are to him. Almost every police group in the nation from every state.
That's going to play badly with the left wing. Let me ignore the climate change question.
Donald J. Trump. Almost every police group. And what he's done to the black population is horrible, including the fact that for 10 years he called them super predators. We can't, in the 1990s, we can't forget that. Super predators was his name, and he called it to them for 10, and they've taken great offense at it, and now they see it happening. But when they see what I did for criminal justice reform and for the historically black colleges and universities, where I funded them and got them all funded, and the opportunity zones with Tim, as you know, Tim Scott was incredible. He did a great job, great senator from South Carolina. He came to me with the idea. It was a great idea. It's one of the most successful economic.
Did he already announce that Tim Scott was going to be his VP? Because that is interesting. That was weird that he just threw Tim Scott. No, I don't think so. He just threw Tim Scott like Trump doesn't just randomly compliment people. That's weird. So, I mean, might that be a sign that his VP is going to be Tim Scott?
Ever in the country, opportunity.
I don't think Tim Scott is going to be
beneficiary are blacks.
It's going to bring in a lot of voters.
We have the best numbers with them in maybe ever. They're saying ever. I read this morning where ever the best numbers.
Tim Scott might be a loyalist.
Much of the black population.
Trump might be building his coalition around loyalty.
Black people. He's also done a horrible job for Hispanics. But wait till you see these millions of people pouring into our country, and they're going to take the jobs, and it's already started, and you haven't seen anything yet. It's a disaster.
38 seconds left. President Trump, will you take any action as president to slow the climate crisis?
So I want absolutely immaculate clean water, and I want absolutely clean air, and we had it. We had H2O. We had the best numbers ever, and we were using all forms of energy, all forms, everything. And yet, in 4 years,
I guess what he's saying is, like, having a healthy planet is somewhat related to climate change, but it's usually not like the dirty water that's causing the climate change or the clean air. It's usually the things that cause climate change are also causing the dirty water and the dirty air. So maybe this is like his compromise.
Environmental numbers ever. And my
bit of a
environmental people gave me that statistic just before I walked on the stage, actually.
I don't know where the hell he's been. The idea that anything he said is true. I passed the most extensive climate change legislation in history. We find ourselves, and by the way, black colleges. I came up with $15 billion for HBCUs, historic black universities and colleges, because they don't have the kind of contributors that they have to build these laboratories and the like. Any black student is capable in college of doing any white student can do. They just don't have the money, but now they'll be able to get those jobs in high tech. We're in a situation where the idea that he is claiming to have done something that had the cleanest water, he hadn't done a damn thing for the environment. He pulled out of the Paris Peace Accord, Climate Accord. I immediately joined it because if we reach 1.5 degrees Celsius at any one point, there's no way back. The only existential threat to humanity.
I wasn't thinking that Trump did. He does kind of just throw stuff out there, and Biden caught this, but interesting.
Climate change, and he didn't do a damn thing about it. He wants to undo all that I've done.
The Paris Accord was going to cost us $1 trillion, and China nothing, and Russia nothing, and India nothing. It was a ripoff of the United States, and I ended it because I didn't want to waste that money because they treated us horribly. We were the only ones who was costing us money. Nobody else was paying into it, and it was a disaster. But everything that he said just now, I'll give you an example. I heard him say before insulin. I'm the one that got the insulin down for the seniors. I took care of the seniors. What he's doing is destroying all of our medical programs because the migrants coming in, they want everybody. And look, I have the biggest heart on the stage. I guarantee you that. And I want to take care of people. But we're destroying our country. They're taking over our schools, our hospitals, and they're going to be taking over Social Security. He is destroying Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid.
I mean, literally, that's an appeal to care hard. Biden made the
consequence. We're not members of the Paris Accord. How can we do anything we're not able to? The United States can't get it.
He literally said, "I have the biggest heart."
Number one, we're making significant progress.
It wasn't a very good appeal to care.
We will have pollution. We have made significant progress, and we're continuing to make progress. We set up a climate corps for thousands of young people to learn how to deal with them, just like the Peace Corps. And we're moving in directions that are going to significantly change the elements of cause of pollution. But the idea that he claims that he has the biggest heart up here and he's really concerned about pollution and about climate, I've not seen any indication of that. And by the way, with regard to prescription drugs, one company agreed that they would reduce the price to $35, which I was calling for, one, voluntarily. I made sure every company in the world, every pharmaceutical company, cannot have to pay.
Thank you.
And by the way,
So every day, millions of Americans struggle just to make ends meet. For many older Americans, Social Security provides a critical lifeline.
That's interesting.
President Biden, if nothing is done to Social Security, seniors will see their benefits cut in just over 10 years. Will you name tonight one specific step that you're willing to take to keep Social Security solvent?
yes, make the very wealthy begin to pay their fair share. Right now, everybody making under $170,000 pays 6% of their income, of their paycheck, every single time they get a paycheck from the time the first one they get when they're 18 years old. The idea that they're going to, I'm proposing that everybody, they pay, the millionaires pay 1%. 1%. So no one after, I would not raise the cost of Social Security for anybody under $400,000. After that, I began to make the wealthy begin to pay their fair share by increasing from 1% beyond to be able to guarantee the program for life.
So you still have 82 seconds left. Are there any other measures that you think that would be able to help keep Social Security solvent, or is that one enough?
Well,
It's just a look on his face. It does not look good. I keep ducking below my camera line. That was a pretty, I think pretty optically reasonable answer. That's interesting. Biden is going to be way up on the expectations.
But the biggest thing I'll do if we defeat this man, because he wants to get rid of Social Security. He thinks there's plenty to cut in Social Security. He's wanting to cut Social Security and Medicare both times. And if you look at the program put forward by the House Republican caucus that I believe supports, is in fact want to cut it as well. The idea that we don't need to protect our seniors is ridiculous. And by the way, the American public has greater health care coverage today than ever before. And under the ACA, as I said, you're in a circumstance where 400,000 people, 40 million people would not have insurance because they have a pre-existing condition. Only thing allows them to have that insurance is the fact that they, in fact, are part of the ACA. And by the way, the other thing is we're in a situation where we talk about education for Black communities. I've raised the amount of money for Pell Grants, another $8,000. So anybody making under $70,000 a year is going to be able to get $15,000 towards their tuition. He just doesn't know what he's talking about.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump.
So I've dealt with politicians all my life. I've been on this side of the equation for the last 8 years. I've never seen anybody lie like this guy. He lies. I've never seen it. He can look you in the face. About so many other things too.
He almost started talking about his business, which would have been.
We mentioned the laptop. We mentioned Russia, Ukraine. Everything he does is a lie. It's misinformation and disinformation. The losers and suckers story that he made up is a total lie on the military. It's a disgrace. But Social Security, he's destroying it because millions of people are pouring into our country and they're putting them onto Social Security. They're putting them onto Medicare, Medicaid. They're putting them in our hospitals. They're taking the place of our citizens. What they're doing to the
a lot of this debate is no, you're the one actually doing that thing you just accused.
VA to our veterans is unbelievable. Our veterans are living in the street and these people are living in luxury hotels. He doesn't know what he's doing. And it's really coming back. I've never seen such anger in our country before.
President Biden.
The idea that veterans are not being taken care of, I told you before. And by the way, when I said suckers and losers, he acknowledged after that he fired that general. That general got fired because he's the one that acknowledged that that's what he said. He was the one standing with Trump when he said it, number one. Number two, the idea that we're going to be in a situation where all these millions and millions, the way he talks about it, illegal aliens are coming into the country and taking away our jobs. There's a reason why we have the fastest growing economy in the world, the reason why we have the most successful economy in the world. We're doing better than any other nation in the world. And by the way, those 15 Nobel laureates you talked about being phony, those 15 Nobel laureates, economists, they all said that if Trump is reelected, we're elected to have a recession and inflation is going to increasingly go up. And by the way, worst president in history, 159 presidential scholars voted him the worst president in the history of the United States of America.
President Biden, thank you so much. Let's turn to the cost of child care, which,
by the way, people voted you worse.
Many American families struggle to afford. President Trump, both you and President Biden have tried to address this issue, but the average cost of child care in this country has risen to more than $11,000 a year per child. For many families, the cost of child care for 2 children is more than their rent. In your second term, what would you do to make child care more affordable?
Just to go back, the general got fired because he was no good. And if he said that, that's why he made it up. But we have 19 people that said I didn't say it, and they're very high.
Well, if he didn't say it, he would have fired the general for lying. And if he did say it, he would have fired the general for whistleblowing. So, obviously, he's going to get fired either way, right?
Highly respected, much more so than him. The other thing is,
and we got
people.
I bet a
He never
general.
fired people. I've never seen him fire anybody. I did fire a lot. I fired Comey because he was no good. I fired a lot of the top people at the FBI, drained the swamp. They were no good. Not easy to fire people. You'd pay a price for it, but they were no good. I inherited these people. I didn't put Comey there. He was no good. I fired him. This guy hasn't fired anybody. He never fires. He should have fired every military man that was involved with the Afghanistan.
So that's interesting because I would have viewed the stability of Biden's administration as like a positive thing, but if a lot of people view DC as just like inherently corrupt, maybe that the fact that there was not a lot of turnover in the Biden administration is like they're going to view that as a bad thing. That's an interesting way to spin that.
Horror show, the most embarrassing moment in the
There's
history
like-
of our country. He didn't fire. Did you?
They have like this inverse correlation where usually the left winger is the one who wants to introduce chaos and the right winger is all about order. But Trump is clearly the agent of chaos here, and Biden has this rigidly stable administration. And they're both trying to accuse, they're saying, I'm the middle ground, you're the extreme. So Biden's saying, you've got all these, he's going to say, you're like, have this chaotic presence. And Trump's like, I have an appropriate amount of chaos, you're too rigid, and the country's worse off for that. So it's interesting. It's interesting how you can always spin these ways in like multiple directions. You can spin these things in multiple ways, right? And I mean, just you have to be able to do that in order to be in politics in the first place.
Did you fire anybody that's on the border that's allowed us to have the worst border in the history of the world? Did anybody get fired for allowing 18 million people, many from prisons, many from mental institutions? Did you fire anybody that allowed our country to be destroyed? Joe, our country is being destroyed as you and I sit up here and waste a lot of time on this debate. This shouldn't be a debate. He is the worst president. He just said about me because I said it. But look, he's the worst president in the history of our country. He's destroyed our country. Now all of a sudden he's trying to get a little tough on the border. He came out with a nothing deal, and it reduced it a little bit, like this much. It's insignificant. He wants open borders. He wants our country to either be destroyed or he wants to pick up those people as voters. And I don't think we just can't let it happen. If he wins this election, our country doesn't have a chance, not even a chance, of coming out of this rut. We probably won't have a country left anymore. That's how bad it is. He's the worst in history by far.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden?
We are the most admired country in the world. We're the United States of America. There's nothing beyond our capacity. We have the finest military in the history of the world.
That's
the
a
finest in the history of the
patriotism.
world. No one thinks we're weak. No one wants to screw around with us. Nobody. Number one. Number two, the idea that we're talking about worst presidents. I wasn't joking. Look it up or go online. 159 or 58, don't hold me the exact number.
Yeah, but people are going to view that as like biased.
Presidential historians, they've had meetings and they voted who's the worst president in American history, one from best to worst. They said he was the worst in all of American history. That's a fact. That's not conjecture. He can argue they're wrong, but that's what they voted. The idea that he is doing anything to deal with child care, he did for virtually nothing to child care. We should significantly increase the child care tax credit. We should significantly increase the availability of women and men or single parents to be able to go back to work. And we should encourage businesses to have.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump, the question was about what would you do to make child care more affordable, if you want to take your minute.
Just so you understand, we have polling, we have other things that they rate him the worst because what he's done is so bad. And they rate me, I'll show you, I will show you. And they rate me one of the best, okay? And if I'm given another 4 years, I will be the best. I think I'll be the best.
Joe.
Nobody's ever created an economy like us. Nobody ever cut taxes like us. He's the only one I know. He wants to raise your taxes by 4 times. He wants to raise everybody's taxes by 4 times. He wants the Trump tax cuts to expire. So everybody, including the two of you, are going to pay 4 to 5 times. Nobody ever heard of this before. All my life, I'd grow up and I'd see politicians talking about cutting taxes. When we cut taxes, as I said, we did more business. Apple and all these companies, they were bringing money back into our country. The worst president in history by far, and everybody knows it.
President Biden?
That's another. Biden said these people voted you, and Trump said, "Well, I have my people, and they voted you the worst president."
Well,
and
the
it's
fact
not
of the matter
particularly
is that
close.
he's dead wrong about. He's increased the tariff. He will increase the taxes on middle class people. I said I'd never raise a tax on anybody making less than $400,000. I didn't. But this tariff is 10% tariffs. Everything coming in the country. You know what the economists say? That's going to cost the average American $2,500 a year more because they're going to have to pay the difference in food and all the things that were imported. Number two, he's in a situation where he talks about how he has not raised, he somehow helped the middle class. Middle class have been devastated by you. Now you want a new tax cut of $5 trillion over the next 10 years, which is going to fundamentally bankrupt the country. You had the largest deficit of any president in American history, number one. Number two, you have not, in fact, made any contact, any progress.
Does Biden have a smaller deficit than Trump? That's interesting. Well, is that including COVID, maybe? I can imagine. I mean, if he's counting COVID, then that makes sense, but that doesn't make sense that.
With China. We are the lowest trade deficit with China since 2010.
Thank you, President Biden. Thank you, President Biden. Let's discuss an epidemic impacting millions of Americans that both of you have made a top priority in your first term, the opioid crisis. And for both of you, the number of overdose deaths in this country has gone up. Under your term, it went up. Under your term, it has gone up. Former President Trump, despite the efforts that both of you have made, more than 100,000 Americans are dying from overdoses every year, primarily from fentanyl and other opioids. What will you do to help Americans right now in the throes of addiction who are struggling to get the treatment they need?
To finish up, we now have the largest deficit in the history of our country under this guy. We have the largest deficit with China. He gets paid by China. He's a Manchurian candidate. He gets money from China. So I think he's afraid to deal with them or something. But do you notice he never took out my tariffs because we bring in so much money with the tariffs that I imposed on China. He never took them away. He can't because it's too much money. It's tremendous. And we saved our steel industries, and there was more to come. But he hasn't done that. But he hasn't cut the tariffs because it's too much money. But he's got the largest deficit in the history of our country, and he's got the worst.
He's not confused.
The worst situation with China. China's going to own us if you keep allowing them to do what they're doing to us as a country. They are killing us as a country, Joe, and you can't let that happen. You're destroying our country.
So, President Trump, you have 67 seconds left.
First names are fun between these two, right?
The question was, what are you going to do to help Americans in the throes of addiction right now who are struggling to get the treatment they need?
Jake, we were doing very well at addiction until the COVID came along. We had 2.5, almost 3 years of like nobody's ever had before, any country, in every way. And then we had to get tough. And it was the drugs pouring across the border were it started to increase. We got great equipment. We bought the certain dog that's the most incredible thing that you've ever seen, the way they can spot it. We did a lot. And we were getting very low numbers, very, very low numbers. Then he came along. The numbers, have you seen the numbers now? It's not only the 18 million people that I believe is even low because the gotaways, they don't even talk about gotaways, but the numbers of the amount of drugs and human trafficking in women coming across our border, the worst thing I've ever seen, at numbers that nobody's ever seen under him because the border's so bad. But the number of drugs coming across our border now is the largest we've ever had by far.
President Trump, thank you. President Biden?
Fentanyl and the byproducts of fentanyl went down for a while. And I wanted to make sure we use the machinery that can detect fentanyl, these big machines that roll over everything that comes across the border. And it costs a lot of money. That was part of this deal we put together, this bipartisan deal. More fentanyl machines, more be able to detect drugs, more numbers of agents, more numbers of all the people at the border. And when we had that deal done, he called his Republican colleagues and said, don't do it. It's going to hurt me politically. No, he never argued it's not a good bill. It's a really good bill. We need those machines. We need those machines. And we're coming down very hard in every country in Asia in terms of precursors for fentanyl. And Mexico is working with us to make sure they don't have the technology to be able to put it together. That's what we have to do. We need those machines.
Thank you, President Biden. Now, President Trump, and again, the question is about Americans in the throes of addiction right now, struggling to get the treatment they need.
Well, this does pertain to it. He ended Remain in Mexico. He ended catch and release. I made it catch and release in Mexico, not catch and release here. We had so many things that we had done, hard negotiations with Mexico, and I got it all for nothing. It's just like when you have a hostage. We always pay $6 billion for a hostage. Every time we say a hostage. Now we have a hostage, a Wall Street Journal reporter, I think a good guy, and he's over there because Putin is laughing at this guy, probably asking for billions of dollars for the reporter. I will have him out very quickly as soon as I take office. Before I take office, I said by literally as soon as I win the election, I will have that reporter out. He should have had him out a long time ago. But Putin's probably asking for billions and billions of dollars because this guy pays it every time. We had 2 cases where we paid $6 billion for 5 people. I got 58 people out, and I paid essentially nothing.
Thank you, President Trump. Dana?
Let's turn to concerns that voters have about each of you. President Biden, you would be 86 at the end of your second term. How do you address concerns about your capability to handle the toughest job in the world well into your 80s?
Well, first of all, I spent half my career being criticized as being the youngest person in politics. I was the second youngest person ever elected to the United States Senate, and now I'm the oldest. This guy's 3 years younger and a lot less competent. I think that just look at the record. Look at what I've done. Look how I've turned around the horrible situation he left me. As I said, 15 million new jobs, 800,000 manufacturing jobs, more investment in America, over billions of dollars in private investment in enterprises that we are growing. By the way, we brought off a lot of people. The whole idea of computer chips. We used to have 40% of the market. We invented those chips, and we lost it because he was sending people to find the cheapest jobs overseas and to bring home a product. So I went to South Korea. I convinced Samsung to invest billions of dollars here in the United States. And guess what? Those fabs.
As soon as Trump speaks, I'm going to do a bingo because I'm missing a space where Trump brings up
over $100,000,
specifically Biden's mental decline.
And there's billions, about $40 billion already being invested and being built right now in the United States, creating significant jobs for Americans from all over the world.
President Biden, you have 40 seconds left. Would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I would. The idea that somehow we are this failing country. I never heard a president talk like this before. We're the envy of the world. Like, name me a single major
whispering, or is my audio turned
trade places with the United States of America for all our problems and all our opportunities. We're the most progressive country in the world in getting things done. We're the strongest country in the world. We're a country in the world who keeps our word, and everybody trusts us.
Good.
All of our allies.
Sounds like he's even quieter.
And those who he calls up to, Kim Jong-un, we send love letters to, and Putin, etc. They don't want to screw around with us.
Thank you. Former President Trump, to follow up, you would be 82 at the end of your second term. What do you say to voters who have concerns about your capabilities to serve?
Well, I took 2 tests, cognitive tests. I aced them, both of them, as you know. We made it public. He took none. I'd like to see him take one, just one, a real easy one. Like, go through the first 5 questions. He couldn't do it. But I took 2 cognitive tests.
That's a bingo.
Exams every year.
That's a bingo.
We knock on wood wherever we may have wood. I'm in very good health.
I got a bingo. Here's what it is. It's going to be 1 for Trump, field goal, fingers. 2, his mic gets cut off. I added that. Honestly, that probably shouldn't be on the thing because they cut off the mic after all the things, but whatever. After all the questions. 3, says he's the greatest at something. Honestly, I should have stamped this so many times. He's been doing this a lot. 4, brings up Biden's mental capacity. Yep, that's what we were waiting for this question. I was surprised he didn't do it until now, but here we are. And 5, inflation. He hit that a couple times, but not that many, honestly. All right, so that's bingo. I wonder if we might be able to get another one before the debate's over, but I don't even care at this point.
I just won 2 club championships, not even senior, 2 regular club championships. To do that, you have to be quite smart, and you have to be able to hit the ball a long way.
Got to be intelligent.
He doesn't do it. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. He challenged me to a golf match. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. I think I'm in very good shape. I feel that I'm as in good a shape as I was 25, 30 years ago. Actually, I'm probably a little bit lighter.
Flirting
but
with
I'm
him?
as good a shape as I was years
like
ago. I feel very good. I feel the same. But I was willing to take a cognitive test. And you know what? If I didn't do well, I aced him. Dr. Ronnie Jackson, who's a great guy when he was White House doctor. And then I took another one, a similar one. And one of them said they'd never seen anybody ace him.
Thank you. President Biden?
You can see he is 6'5" and only 223 pounds, or 235 pounds. Well, you said 6'4", 200. Well, anyway, that's what anyway, just take a look at what he says he is and take a look at what he is. Look, I'd be happy to have a driving contest with him. I got my handicap, which when I was vice president, down to a 6. And by the way, I told you before, I'm happy to play golf if you carry your own bag. Think you can do it?
What's the biggest ladder? He's a 6 handicap of all.
I was at 8 handicap.
Yeah.
8.
They're arguing about golf right now. That's so funny.
President Trump, we're going to
let's not act like children.
To a specific concern that voters have about you. Will you pledge tonight?
Donald Trump was the one who just said, let's not act like children. That's crazy.
The results of this election, regardless of who wins.
Is this character development?
Say right now that political
is that
violence
what this
in any
is? Is
form
this
is
character development?
Well, I shouldn't have to say that, but of course I believe that. It's
Are you
totally
kidding
unacceptable.
me? I never in a million years would I have thought that the former president, convicted felon, Donald Trump, is the one telling everyone not to act like children. This is amazing. Everybody in the country's headed in a positive direction. He was arguing with the current president about whose golf handicap was the lowest. But, then he stepped up. He said, let's not act like children.
And if you would see my statements that I made on Twitter at the time, and also my statement that I made in the Rose Garden, you would say it's one of the strongest statements you've ever seen. In addition to the speech I made in front of, I believe, the largest crowd I've ever spoken to. And I will tell you, nobody ever talks about that. They talk about a relatively small number of people that went to the Capitol, and in many cases were ushered in by the police. And as Nancy Pelosi said, it was her responsibility, not mine. She said that loud and clear. But the answer is, if the election is fair, free, and I want that more than anybody. And I'll tell you something. I wish he was a great president, because I wouldn't be here right now. I'd be at one of my many places enjoying myself. I wouldn't be under indictment because I wouldn't have been his political opponent, because he indicted me because I was his opponent. I wish he was a great president. I would rather have that. I wouldn't be here. I don't mind being here. The only reason I'm here is he's so bad as a president that I'm going to make America great again. We're going to make America great again. We're a failing nation right now. We're a seriously failing nation. And we're a failing nation because of him. His policies are so bad. His military policies are insane. They're insane. These are wars that will never end with him. He will drive us into World War III, and we're closer to World War III than anybody can imagine. We are very, very close to World War III, and he's driving us there. And Kim Jong-un and President Xi of China, Kim Jong-un of North Korea, all of these, Putin, they don't respect him. They don't fear him. They have nothing going with this gentleman, and he's going to drive us into World War III.
You want a World War III, let him follow and win, and let Putin say, do what you want, NATO. Just do what you want. There's a thing called Article 5. An attack on one is attack on all, a required response. The idea, I can't think of a single major leader in the world who wouldn't trade places with the job I've done, what they've done, because we are a powerful nation. But you continue to provoke this lie about somehow there's all this misrepresentation, all this stealing. There's no evidence of that at all. And I tell you what, I doubt whether you'll accept it because you're such a whiner. The idea, if you lose again, you accept anything, you can't stand loss. Something snapped in you when you lost the last time.
We'll be right back with more from the CNN presidential debate, live from Georgia.
I actually fast forwarded a couple minutes there.
The people home happy.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
I mean, are they still going? I guess I could check. Is there no live chat? Fascinating. All right, I'll wait a couple minutes. I mean, maybe they're still going. This is sort of a peculiar. Here, I can take this off now. It's better. Yeah, my hair clearly out of the shower. Yeah, I should put this back on. I did not expect. I mean, they jumped right from arguing about whose golf swing was better to World War III. It was very peculiar. I mean, as of now, the bingo spots neither of them have made an overt appeal to liberty oppression, which is very, very interesting. Trump has not called him Sleepy Joe at all either, which I would have thought was a give me. Biden hasn't forgotten where he was yet, nor has he said, "Come on, man," which is his catchphrase, nor has he brought up Obama. So there's a couple things that still haven't happened in the debate that I would have expected.
Watching this debate.
And closing statements as predetermined by a coin toss. We're going to begin with you, President Biden. You have 2 minutes.
2 minutes for President Biden.
We made significant progress from the debacle that was left by President Trump in his last term. We found ourselves in a situation where, number one, we have to make sure that we have a fair tax system. I ask anyone out there in the audience, or anyone out watching this debate, do you think the tax system is fair? The fact is that I said nobody making under $400,000 had a single penny increase in their taxes, and will not. And if I'm reelected, that'll be the case again. But this guy has increased your taxes because of the deficit. Number one, he's increased inflation because of the debacle he left after the way he handled the pandemic, and he finds himself in a position where he now wants to tax you more by putting a 10% tariff on everything that comes into the United States of America. What I did, well, for example,
he didn't say the word trade war,
but the ability of Medicare to.
I don't know. I'm not going to count this as tariffs.
Us to be able to negotiate drug prices with the big pharma companies. Well, guess what? We got it down to $35 for insulin instead of $400. No more than $2,000 for every senior, no matter how much prescription they need. You know what that did? That reduced the federal debt by $160 billion over 10 years because the government doesn't have to pay the exorbitant prices. I'm going to make that available to every senior all along what's happening now, and everybody in America. He wants to get rid of that. I'm going to make sure that we have child care. We're going to significantly increase the credits that people have for child care. I'm going to make sure
You
we
mean the
do something
deficit?
about
What does he
what's going
mean?
on,
It's
blood
not going to
pipes
reduce
and
the
all the things
debt.
that are causing health problems for people across the country.
That is
We're
going to
continue
reduce
to fight to bring down
prices?
inflation and give people a break.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump, you now have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Like so many politicians, this man is just a complainer. He said, we want to do this, we want to do that, we want to get rid of this tax, that tax. But he doesn't do anything. All he does is make our country unsafe by allowing millions and millions of people to pour in. Our military doesn't respect him. We look like fools in Afghanistan. We didn't stop Israel. It was such a horrible thing that would have never happened. It should have never happened. Iran was broke. Anybody that did business with Iran, including China, they couldn't do business with the United States. They all passed. Iran was broke. They had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah, for terror, no money whatsoever. Again, Ukraine should have never happened. He talks about all this stuff, but he didn't do it. For 3.5 years, we're living in hell. We have the Palestinians and we have everybody else rioting all over the place. You talk about Charlottesville.
Okay.
This is 100 times
Now,
Charlottesville.
It might just be that it's 10:30 at the night and I have to wake up at 4 a.m. tomorrow. And it might just be the delusions talking. But I think that I'm a pretty handsome guy. I'm looking at myself in the camera and I'm like, wow, that's a pretty handsome guy. I might be so incredibly delusional. Isn't that so funny? I'm listening to this debate and I just suddenly caught a glimpse of myself in my webcam and I'm like, I look silly because of the headband and because I'm like unshaven and I got out of the shower so my hair is all like weird. But other than that, I think I'm fine with 2 E's. Isn't that weird? In my head, I'm always either like an incredibly ugly slob or like an incredibly handsome guy. But very rarely do I ever just look at myself and think that's what I look like. And I'm looking at myself right now and I'm like, I'm not like the supermodel, but I'm fine. I look like a normal person, which is weird. Isn't that crazy? These are the amazing things you can get up to when you stay up late watching debates. You can look at yourself in a new light.
1,000 times.
You come to realizations about yourself.
Exploding because of you, because they don't respect you, and they have to respect their president, and they don't respect you throughout the world. What we did was incredible. We rebuilt the military. We got the largest tax cut in history, the largest regulation cut in history. The reason he's got jobs is because I cut the regulations that gave jobs, but he's putting a lot of those regulations back on. All of the things that we've done, nobody's never seen anything like, even from a medical standpoint, right to try, where we can try space-age materials instead of going to Asia or going to Europe and trying to get when you're terminally ill. Now you can go and you can get something. You sign a document. They've been trying to get it for 42 years. But you know what we did for the military was incredible. Choice for our soldiers, where our soldiers, instead of waiting for 3 months to see a doctor, can go out and get themselves fixed up and readied up and take care of themselves, and they're living. And that's why I had the highest approval rating in the history of the VA. So all of these things, we're in a failing nation, but it's not going to be failing anymore. We're going to make it great again.
Thank you, former President
I didn't
Trump,
even put MAGA on it.
President
Are you
Biden.
kidding me?
Stay with us because we have full analysis of this debate. Anderson Cooper and Aaron Burnett starts now on CNN.
All right, so that's the debate. Do I have final thoughts about the debate? Who do I think won? Well, according to my bingo sheet here, the person who was more predictable leading up the debate, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Biden has 11 stamps on his bingo card. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Trump has 12. Trump was more predictable. And I think Biden performed better than I think a lot of people were expecting. I feel like people were expecting more gaffes, more staring off into space. He was responsive. He slurred his words a lot, and that's, we shouldn't ignore that. But he was in the moment. He was present, and not once did I think he wasn't sure where he was. And because of that, I feel like a lot of the things I put on my bingo sheet, like, clearly forgets where he is. or, waits more than 5 seconds looking for a word, which I stamped off, but it was kind of borderline. A lot of the things didn't manifest quite the way I was expecting. And I think that's a good thing. He's the president. He should be more mentally capable than we think. So that's who do I think won? I don't know. I don't know if this was a clear winner. I feel like Biden did not hammer on the convicted felon thing nearly as much as I was expecting. And because of that, I think Trump might have come off to sort of like the middle groundish voter as a little bit better just because Biden was off-putting. So in totality, I think Trump probably takes it. However, relative to what we were expecting, a lot of people were expecting Biden to do really poorly, and he didn't do that poorly. And I think it might be more of a victory for him because he outperformed. Like if Trump was expected to win by a wide margin, like a soccer game that's like 2-0, or soccer game's bad comparison. They were expecting him to win by God, what am I thinking? Whatever. Let's just say 10-0 in any random sports, but actually Trump won 10-9, or it was really close. And because Biden way outperformed what everyone was saying he was going to do, I think he might have won. I think that might count as a win. The overperforming counts as a optical victory. People will be more confident about Biden's ability to lead after this debate than they were previously. And nothing probably changed about Trump. So yeah, I think that's it. Nobody watched, which is fine. I don't know. I mean, I wonder how many people were even planning on doing debate analysis tonight anyway, right? Probably a ton of people, so who cares? But that was my ideas. I'm here. And if you happen to find this, thank you for watching. Maybe I was an idiot. Maybe I wasn't. I definitely wasn't. I'm the best, but cool. I was about to end the stream like that, but I failed. So let me say goodbye. Goodbye.